Good morning. We're getting ready for our canning, and the first thing that we have to do is we have got to have really clean jars. So we're running extremely hot soapy water, and we're going to wash our jars thoroughly so that they'll be ready for us when we start canning our hot sauce. Okay, we're ready to get started. Look at these gorgeous tomatoes, you guys. They don't have to be perfect when you're using them for canning because we're gonna actually process them and they're gonna be great. But to go from tomatoes to jars, you can show down here, there's a process. And so the first thing we need to do is get our tomatoes washed and get the skins off. Okay, here we are, and you can see that skin just starting to slip off. So if you look here in the sink, I've got ice water, and we're just putting those tomatoes directly in there. What's gonna happen is that skin is gonna start to slip off. If you look right here, you can see it. And that makes it so much easier to get the tomatoes ready for our hot sauce. Okay, here we are, and look how easily that skin is coming off. So the next thing that we're gonna do is, you can see right here, we still have the core of the tomato, so we're gonna use a knife to get that out because we definitely don't want that in our hot sauce. Next part of this process is we are going to have to cut up onions and jalapenos. This can be the great part that gives it lots of flavor, but also, boy, the part that tears your eyes up a lot. Okay, so I'm going to use a food processor to help. My recipe calls for 3 onions, and you want to have your knife really sharp. And what I like to do is just kind of do a rough chop of the onions, and then I'm going to put them in the food processor. It just makes this whole process a whole lot easier, and maybe I won't tear up quite as much as I would if I didn't. So food processors can be your friend. Be careful when you're cutting, and to make sure that you're using a clean cutting board that's just for vegetables. Okay, well, no hot sauce would be hot sauce without jalapeno peppers. How many you put really depends on how hot you like your hot sauce. We have got lots and lots of tomatoes that we're doing. So my recipe typically calls for 12 to 14 jalapenos, but you see there's a lot of difference in size. So you're gonna have to kind of play with it a little bit to see how you like it. You'll notice I have on gloves, and that's because jalapenos can be really hot, and I don't want to burn my eyes, and so I usually like to wear gloves when I'm cutting these things up. I'm gonna put it in seeds and all. You could de-seed it if you wanted to, but I kind of like mine hot, so I'm gonna put it in there just as it is. So we're just gonna cut it into some chunks, and then I'm gonna put it in this food processor so that it does the work for me. And just pop the lid on it, give it a little pulse, and that's all it is to it. Okay, now it's time to get our dry spices that we're gonna put in our hot sauce mixture. My recipe calls for about 1.5 tablespoons of salt. And so, again, I'm just eyeballing it, all right? So there's roughly 1.5 tablespoons. Then we're gonna use some black pepper, about 2 tablespoons of black pepper. Let me get that open. So we'll get that, and again, just kind of trying to eyeball it a little bit. We're making a pretty large quantity, so I'm not measuring exactly. And then again, it's hot sauce. So putting a little red pepper in here. You don't have to put as much if you don't want to. I had quite a bit of jalapenos, so usually my recipe calls for about 2 tablespoons of red pepper. I may not put quite that many because I've got quite a bit of jalapeno in there. And then I'm gonna add both garlic salt and garlic powder, okay? So about a heaping teaspoon of each. This is garlic salt. Let's see if I can get that off. So about a heaping teaspoon of each. So there's my garlic salt. And then this is the garlic powder, okay? So we're gonna add a teaspoon of that as well, a good heaping teaspoon, okay? So that's gonna be our dry ingredients, and we will add this to the mixture, and then we're also gonna be adding some vinegar and some cilantro.
Okay, so now we're gonna add a cup of vinegar, and since we have 2 pots, we're kind of guesstimating, but we're gonna add it to the big pot. go on to the next step.
Okay, so right now Avery is using an immersion blender, and this really works great, you guys, if your tomatoes are in kind of large chunks and you want to break them down a little bit. You just want to be careful that you keep it submerged or you'll get spray all over the place. But an immersion blender is kind of a quick way to help break up some of your vegetables so it's a little bit more broken down in the process. Go ahead.
So now we are gonna rinse some cilantro, my favorite part, and we're gonna add it to the big pot of ingredients.
Okay, Avery, you got it ready?
Yes, we are rough chopping the cilantro, and we are about ready to add it. So we're gonna just dump it in.
Awesome. That makes it really good, you guys. If you don't like cilantro, you don't have to add it, but I think it really adds a lot of flavor. So, and if you got it fresh in your garden, it's a great way to use some fresh herbs from your garden as well. Okay, here we are, and we are starting to fill the jars. And if you see, Avery has a funnel, and she's using that to transfer the hot, bubbling hot sauce into the clean, sterilized jars. Makes it a little bit easier. Want to leave a little bit of space at the top of the jar. It's probably about good. And then maybe a little bit more, Avery. Maybe one more little. There you go. And so that jar is filled. And then now what Avery's going to do, if you can see the little magnetic tool, that helps to lift those lids out of the hot water. And then she's going to put, notice how, go all the way around real good with that to show it. That is just to make sure there's no hot sauce that's on the top of that jar. We want to make sure we get a good seal. So she's cleaning that, and then she's going to put the lid on and then just lightly turn, okay, just like that. So we're going to fill a couple of these, and then we're going to put it into our water bath canner, and then we'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so we have got the last jar ready. And notice Avery put the lid on, and the ring she just put on there, but it didn't tighten it down all the way tight. And that's because we want a little bit of the air coming out. So our next step we're going to do is we are going to lower, I'm going to shift a little bit, it's okay. We're going to lower this down into the water. Avery, you may want to use some gloves or hot mitts. So just kind of lift up and then gently go down. Perfect, excellent. So you guys can see some of the bubbles coming up from the air. It's perfect, okay? So we are going to process that for about 25 minutes. We're going to put a lid on it, and then we'll be ready to take them out, and we'll know that they're sealed properly when we start hearing the popping of the lids in the jars. And then your hot sauce will be safe and ready to let it fully cool, and you can have it in your cabinet for up to a year. Okay, Avery's got our hot sauce ready to go into our water bath canner, and you can see she's got a little tool to be able to do that. Make sure it stays up nice and upright. To lift and put in there. So we're going to finish filling them. Once we have all of our jars filled, this particular water bath canner will hold 7. Then we will lower them down into the water. You're going to want about maybe 2 inches above the top of the lid. And then we're going to process them for about 25 minutes. And that just ensures that you have a safe product. And then your hot sauce should be good for 12 to 14 months. So that's what we'll do next. Okay, so the timer's gone off. They've been processing for about 25 minutes, and Avery is taking these out, and we will let them cool on the counter. And then you should start hearing the lids start to pop, and that tells us that they have sealed and that they are ready to go. So that is how you make hot sauce. Makes great gifts for friends. So during this harvest season, you know, whether it's hot sauce or tomato sauce or sweet tomato relish, or if you're making your own jams or jellies, it's a fun way to kind of share your harvest with others. Great job.